What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Better Plays Ahead, and we are past the halfway point of the regular season. We have arrived at week 9. My name is Sam Wagman. You can find me on Twitter at Swagman95. And as always, we are joined by the GameDay.com's fantasy and betting analyst, ranker extraordinaire himself, Frank Ammirante. Frank, how are you doing tonight, my friend?
What's up? I'm always hyped every Thursday, start of a new NFL week. Hopefully we have a strong performance betting-wise. I've hit a cold streak, but those are temporary. We're going to get back on the wagon, back with some winners. We got a real slugfest type of game tonight, but stay tuned to the end of the show and you'll hear all our Thursday night plays as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for me, given times like these, we're both on a little bit of a cold streak. I like to refine the process, use the middle of the season to kind of assess what we've learned, what we can kind of expect from the rest of the year, and then use that to kind of improve the process as we go. Because this is all a grind. It's all about getting better. It's all about, finding better ways to do all of our sports bets. But we're going to get right into it. We have a packed show for you, and we're going to hop right into the chalkboard. And Frank, you have possibly the game of the week here as your chalk bet. So why don't you go ahead and break down your favorite chalkboard bet right here for us?
Yeah, as much as I hate to say it, I'm on the Chiefs -1.5 against the Dolphins. I love me some Miami Dolphins this year. I was really excited about them coming into the season. But let's face it, when they faced an elite team, they really have not gotten it done. They've lost at Buffalo. They've lost at Philly, your Eagles. Even if you go back to last year when Tua was healthy, they lost at San Fran. They lost at Buffalo again. So it's really a thing where I just need to see it before I buy into them, upsetting a perennial contender like the Chiefs, who are coming off a disappointing performance against the Broncos, losing outright on the road. It's a neutral site. We only need them to win by 2 or more. -1.5 isn't a key number. Like, it's not like they're -3.5. Really not a lot to ask for Mahomes and company, who have such an improved defense this year that could, slow down that Dolphins offense to some extent. And with all those factors in mind, I'm on the Chiefs getting a win in Germany. I'm not buying into the whole, I just read this, that the Chiefs are arriving in Germany Thursday or today or tomorrow. And the Dolphins have been there since Tuesday. I don't really care about that. Give me the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting thing because actually, that last point regards that kind of keyed into the London games earlier this year, where we saw the team that arrived earlier had a better performance on the field. So I will say that's definitely weighing on me a little bit. Personally, I'm willing to overlook it. I would also be on the Chiefs in this spot if I end up taking that, because I think I think they're more ready for this kind of spotlight. This is going to be a great game either way. This is suggesting, this is a neutral field. So, this is not Arrowhead Stadium. This is not, Hard Rock Stadium. This is a neutral field. So it suggests that the Chiefs are really 2 points better than the Dolphins. And I think that's kind of right. I think this is, I think we're seeing a lot of people thought that Patrick Mahomes with the flu, really didn't play that well last week. But then again, like I said, he had the flu. So it's kind of interesting to see that. I'm going to be interested to see, some of the injuries that the Chiefs had last week, Nick Bolton being out, for example. We're going to see how some of that plays into this game. But again, the Dolphins have not beat a single good team this year, like you touched on. So I don't know. This is a good litmus test for two contender teams. But I do think that the better quarterback is going to win this game, and the better quarterback in this game is Patrick Mahomes. All right, let's hop on over to my chalkboard bet, and I'm going to go with the other primetime game of the week. That's the Sunday Night Football game between the Bills and the Bengals, and I'm going with the home team in the Bengals there. And look, the Bengals are getting 2 points here, and I think they should be getting more. Like, this is not the Bengals team that we saw start the season. This is not Joe Burrow, who is on the gimpy calf anymore. This is perennial contender Joe Burrow. This is the Cincinnati Bengals, who have come straight out of their early season slump and are ready to contend at the highest level. And look, the last time we saw these two teams play, the game did not end. We all remember what happened. And I'm sure that's going to weigh on some of these players' minds. But I do think that this is a perfect spot for the Bengals to really solidify themselves as AFC contenders in a year where they really haven't done so yet, and really kind of started on their way to that last week after they thrashed the San Francisco 49ers by 2 scores. So, one of the main reasons that I really think that the Bengals are going to pull away with the win here is that I just think they're better than the Bills overall. They're getting they're getting above 70%, both the tickets and the money here, which is a big thing. They're a chalk favorite, which makes them perfect fits for the chalkboard. The public and the sharps both think they're going to win. Rare time where they're both aligned, but the Bills are bottom 7 in quarterback success rate and bottom 4 in EPA allowed since week 5. Their defense hasn't looked the same. They continue to suffer injury after injury after injury to that defensive front. And while their offense has been really good, it's still pretty inconsistent. So I really think this is going to come down to who plays better at quarterback in this one. We all know that Josh Allen can go crazy. But at the end of the day, it's Joe Burrow, man. Joe Cool is going to come out and take this one home on top.
Yeah, I love how he looked last week. You were right, I was wrong. I wanted to see it before I believed into him being fully back, and now I'm fully on board. Completed over 80% of his passes against San Fran in a really impressive road win. And, they beat these Bills in the playoffs handily. In that playoff, it was 27-10. We only need them at -2. I took this one as well. I'm with you. Give me Cincy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with that said, we have our chalkboard plays, and then we have the plays that seem just as good, but they're really not that good. So, Frank, why don't you take us into your trap play of the week?
All right. So my trap play of the week is the Colts -2.5 at Carolina at the Panthers. I actually have the Panthers money line in a parlay. And it's really because, Carolina, they need to win games. It's not like they're playing out the year and they're going to enjoy that first overall pick. They don't have their first round pick. So they need to do whatever they can to keep winning because they don't want to hear that backlash of losing out on potentially, let's say, Caleb Williams in the Bryce Young trade. Now, you look at last week for the Panthers, Bryce Young had his best game of the season. He completed over 71% of his passes. He had his highest PFF passing grade at 68.6 for that win against the Texans. And, if you put that for the whole season, 68.9, it's around, 68.6, it's 21st overall among quarterbacks. So we're starting to see some improvement from Bryce Young coming out of the bye week. And, you look at Gardner Minshew by that same metric, PFF passing grade, he ranks 47th among quarterbacks. So you might argue here that Carolina has the advantage at quarterback. And the Colts EPA against the pass, so they've struggled defending the pass, ranking 21st in that stat. With that said, we get Carolina as home underdogs. And so despite the fact that, they're 1-6, you might see the Colts as short favorites, want to take them. I think that's a trap. I like Carolina here.
Yeah, I also think we can't underestimate the play calling change that Carolina made a couple weeks ago with Thomas Brown now taking over play calling duties from Frank Reich. Their pass rate over expected was nearly 6% higher than it was when Reich was calling the plays. I think we're going to see Bryce get a little bit more of leeway when it comes to throwing the ball. And look, it didn't look particularly great last week in a matchup against the Texans. But I do think there are some decent matchups here. Personally, Adam Thielen versus Kenny Moore should be an interesting matchup out of the slot between those two guys. So that'll be interesting. But I do think this is going to be a closer game. Limiting the Colts has been tough because the Colts play such a fast-paced offense. And you've been a big proponent of this in the past 2 weeks, taking the Colts overs in games like this. So it's set at 44. That means the odds makers are kind of thinking this might be a little bit of a lower scoring game, and a lower scoring game is going to favor Carolina in this scenario. So I'm with you there. I could definitely see this being a big trap and one that I'm happy to avoid. But we're going to dive right into the meat of the Week 9 slate right here. And we're going to go to the betting board. And I'm going to start it off with one of my favorite things to do in betting, and that is to take a ladder play. And, for those of you out there who aren't sure exactly what a ladder play is pretty simple. You go in to whatever book that you're on, whether it be DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars, any of those great sites, and you go and you click alt receiving yards or alt rushing yards, whatever it may be, and they're going to give you a bunch of options there. You're going to have some of the easier to hit options, like say if a player's receiving yards number is set at 48 or 49 and a half, you're going to have an option for 30 and it might be minus 250, and you're going to have an option for 40 and it might be like minus 180. And then you're going to come, to like the even numbers, which is basically you're going to see 50, which is going to be about pretty even money, minus 110. In this case, T. Higgins over 50 is set at minus 110. And then you're going to have progressively higher odds numbers as you get to the bigger ones. And I've gone through 80 with this one. So I took T. Higgins to get 50 plus yards at minus 110. T. Higgins to get 60 plus yards at minus 145. T. Higgins to get 70 plus yards at plus 225. And Higgins to get 80 plus yards at plus 340. And the reason I really like this is because Higgins is the main receiver for the Bengals when it comes to beating man coverage. Despite for all the good that Ja'Marr Chase has done, Higgins has out-targeted him this season when he's been on the field against man coverage, and man coverage is where the Bills get crushed. So I'm going right back to this primetime game with Higgins. I'm going to take Higgins to have a great game. I potentially think he can get over 100 yards. I think this is a great spot for him, not only because of the history that he has against this team with the Damar Hamlin situation. I think this is a great spot to, kind of get the monkey off his back a little bit, in terms of, whatever juju that he's been feeling from that game. But I think that this is a great play for Joe Burrow to target downfield. And that fits both Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. But I feel like T. Higgins is going to see a lot more man coverage and press man than Chase is going to see. And the Bills against man coverage give up a 30% explosive play and over 11 yards per coverage target, both of which are the worst marks in the NFL this season. So while Higgins is set up to go up against Christian Benford, Benford has been awful in pass protection. He's one of the lowest graded pass defenders in the NFL this season, ever since Tre'Davious White went down with an injury. So I'm going to pick on Higgins to have a big day or a big night in this Sunday Night Football primetime game.
Yeah, and to your point with T. Higgins, part of why he's had such a slow start is due to injury, and now he's fully healthy. We saw it against the 49ers. He had 69 yards, caught 5 of 6 targets. So he's trending upwards for sure. And to, it's not like you're asking a lot here. You're just asking him to max out at 80 plus yards, not like 120, 150. So it's totally attainable. I'm with you. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I think you can potentially go a little bit higher. I think he gets up to plus 900 for over 100 yards, which for him, I mean, he's hit that plenty of times in his career. Higgins is one of those guys that can really get down the field, and he can run after the catch as well. So yeah, if you want to go to 100, it's plus 650 all the way there. So I do like this, and it's a great play. But why don't you go in to another one of these very good games that we have on the slate for Week 9 and tell us the 2 plays that you love for the Seahawks and Ravens game?
All right, Seahawks and Ravens. We're going to start off with the Seahawks plus 6, and it's really just because I think this is too many points. I know Baltimore, they look great. They blew out the Lions, but the Seahawks defense has really improved since their secondary has gotten healthy, as our friend Scott Engel loves to say often. They just traded for Leonard Williams, so that defense is on the rise. I think this could be a close game that comes down to the wire. The Seahawks currently ranked 10th in total DVOA. This is a good team, and 6 points feels like too many. We've seen Baltimore, not always cover these high spreads. Look at when they lost at Pittsburgh. Look when they lost at home to the Colts. Sometimes they're hit or miss, this team. And I think this is one of the weeks where we're not going to see them totally blow out the competition. It should be a close game here. I'll take the Seahawks plus 6. But I like a prop even more than that in this game. And that's none other than Lamar Jackson to go over 39.5 rushing yards. You look at Lamar's splits. He's averaging 58.3 rushing yards and 6 yards per carry at home. The Seahawks against running quarterbacks, So they faced Daniel Jones. He rushed 66. He rushed for 66 yards on 10 carries, and Josh Dobbs rushed for 43 yards. So when they faced quarterbacks with, not to say comparable to Lamar in running, but in the above average spectrum of the league in terms of rushing quarterbacks, the Seahawks have given up production. And look at this low bar that we get, 39 and a half rushing yards. Lamar can do that on 2 carries, really. So this is one of my favorite plays of the week. You also add in the fact that the Seahawks run defense has been much improved this season, and Gus Edwards is currently banged up. I believe he missed practice again today on Thursday. So you might see Lamar have to take off a little more than usual, and all we need is 40 or more. This is probably my favorite play of the week.
Yeah, I do like this play. I like the prop a lot more than I like backing the Seahawks here. I do actually think this is a prime spot for the Ravens to kind of solidify where they stand in terms of being one of the better teams in the NFL. I think the Seahawks run a similar enough style of play to the Lions that I think the Ravens can kind of take advantage on that. So that's why I'm personally on Baltimore to cover. I took it at -5.5 earlier in the week. So I personally like that. But I do like this Lamar prop because I think they're gonna have to run, and that's the way the Baltimore B2 is getting the run game efficiently going. And Seahawks run game has been better. They obviously acquired Leonard Williams. That's going to be a big thing for them. So I'm interested to see how he gets worked in this game. My thought is that he doesn't play a full complement of snaps yet. So that's why I do think that Lamar is going to get there. If this was the second week that Leonard Williams was there, I probably wouldn't take this, but I do think Williams is going to mix in enough to limit some of the rushing opportunities for Baltimore, but I just don't think it's there yet. So I do like this prop, and I will roll on this with you. We're going to go back to mine now, though, and it's back to a little bit of a tried and true method, a player that I actually thought was going to get traded at the trade deadline yesterday. But it is Davante Adams over 74.5 receiving yards. And for me, this is an interesting one because we've obviously never really seen Davante Adams be so minimalized like he has been over the past, several weeks. And look, the guy just came to Las Vegas to play with Derek Carr. He didn't really come for any other reason. He got out of Green Bay after Aaron Rodgers was going to leave. And he goes to play with Derek Carr for a season, plays great. And then Derek Carr gets shipped out in the offseason. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in. You can see immediately that Davante was never happy with it to start with. We knew, from a fantasy aspect that this was going to hurt him, and hurt him it has. He hasn't really played that well. Apart from 3 weeks that he has garnered over 12 targets, the rest of them he's been under 10 targets, and he's pretty much underperformed. But 2 of those weeks, you know who his quarterback was? Aiden O'Connell. So with the news this week that the Raiders are cleaning house, they fired Josh McDaniels, they fired GM Dave Ziegler, they fired the offensive coordinator, and they brought in Aiden O'Connell off the bench to lead the team, presumably for the rest of the season or until he sucks so much that they have to go back to Jimmy Garoppolo, which personally I don't think they do at this point because I don't think Jimmy's starting another game in Sin City this season. So with Aiden O'Connell at the helm, Davante has seen his second and third highest targeted games. He had 13 and 12 targets in those games. They ranked second and third to the 20 target game that he saw in week 3, basically after he complained that he wasn't targeted enough in the first couple of games. So they obviously hyper targeted him in that game. But he has those 25 targets over 2 games with Aiden O'Connell. And the big thing here is the coverage scheme that the Giants play more than nearly anybody else. They rank second in man coverage. They play it nearly 40% of the time. That's nearly double the league average. And Davante Adams sees a 38% target share versus man, and he ranks 16th in fantasy points per route run versus man. Now, these are obviously top tier numbers. We're talking about Davante Adams here. So he can beat nearly any coverage, but man coverage is something that he's pretty much excelled against his entire career. Used to be the primary goal line fade option for the Packers when he was in Green Bay. And he's just been unstoppable against single coverage, whether it's press or it's not, pretty much his entire career. There is no way that Deonte Banks is going to be able to guard this man on a consistent basis this week. And I just see Devontae really getting so pissed that he goes off this week. I might end up betting him for a ladder, similarly to Higgins. But for now, I'm just going to take the over 74.5 receiving yards. I think he gets to 90 pretty easily in this game.
Yeah, I could see that, especially with them firing McDaniels. What was one thing that wasn't working? Well, it was not getting Devontae Adams the ball enough. That was a thing that needed to be fixed. So with a new coaching staff, you got to think that's a point of emphasis coming into their first game. That is Antonio Pierce as the interim head coach in his first game. You got to think, feed O'Connell, feed Adams, kid. That's what you got to do. So
yeah, and Pierce is going to want to beat his former team. Obviously, Pierce played for the Giants as a linebacker. I think he's going to want to beat his former team, in his first game as a head coach. And the only way you're going to win this game is if Devontae Adams is heavily involved. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
All right. So we have a couple more bets on our betting board picks. So why don't you go ahead and take us through your last prop that you really like here?
Yeah, so I got a couple left. The first one in this game, this Saints and the Saints play the Bears. Sorry, the Saints game we're moving on to. Little hiccup there, and that's Alvin Kamara over 33.5 receiving yards. This one is quite simple. The Bears are allowing the most yards per target to running backs. Alvin Kamara is averaging over 45 receiving yards per game. We just saw Austin Eckler get over 90 receiving yards against this Bears defense. So, with the usage that Kamara is seeing out of the passing game, he could really fly over this number. And it's just really that simple. 33.5 is much lower than his average. The defense allows running backs to rack up receptions. And I think that will continue to be the case in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely like this one. The thing with Kamara is that he's just been a magnet for catching the ball, and he always has been. I don't like taking any rushing props for him. His RYOE, his rushing yards over expectation, has been down near his career low this season. He's currently, I think, negative 28 rushing yards over expectation, really bad, but he continues to be a really good pass catcher. And while I would rather target, pure receptions and receiving yards for him, especially in a game like this where I'm not sure they're going to have to do much, I think that he can probably get there for you. Now, I want to go to your last spread bet of the week here because it's something that I'm on the other side of.
Yeah.
And I told you that we were going to have a bit of a discussion on this when, we were talking about the newsletter earlier in the week. So you're on the Chargers -3. I want you to give your side, and then I'm going to go and give my side why you should take the Jets.
All right, so my side is quite simple. Number one, it's just the significant advantage at quarterback with Justin Herbert over Zach Wilson. And more importantly, the fact that the Jets' offensive line is decimated right now. They have 4 starters on IR. I know left tackle Dwayne Brown's been designated to return, but I don't believe he'll be ready to return for this one. And it's going to be tough sledding against Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack with this patchwork offensive line. Look at the Jets' performance last week against the Giants. The Giants had a quarterback in there that they refused to allow to throw in Tommy DeVito. He attempted 7 attempts for -1 yards. And yet they still had a tough time. And it's because Zach Wilson really struggled, completed 17 of 36 passes and was sacked 4 times. And a big part of that was O-line issues because the other 2 starters that they lost, their center and their guard, I have their names here. It was Wes Schweitzer and Connor McGovern. They got injured in that Giants game. So that was a big factor in why the Jets struggled so much on offense. I think that will continue to be the case against the Chargers, and I like the Chargers -3.
Okay. I can see all of that. The Chargers definitely have a good amount of hype coming into this game. Look, Justin Herbert chooses picks and chooses when to play well. It's very difficult to say when he's going to pick to play his best game. But one thing I've noticed, the Chargers tend to play down to their opponents in a lot of cases. We had the rare case against Chicago where he really didn't, because he really didn't have to. The Bears are just so bad that they were willing to just crumble multiple times in that game. But the Bears had plenty of chances to get something going, and they didn't. Velus Jones got behind the defense for what would have been a 60-yard touchdown pass that hit him in the chest as he fell down the end zone and just flopped into the end zone lifelessly. That's 7 points gone right there. There were numerous penalties and issues that the Bears just kind of gave up. I think that should have been a much closer game than it was. And I'm not really sure that the Chargers have really proven to us at all that they are the team that we thought that they could be in the preseason. The run game has been pretty mediocre at best, and they're averaging the 8th fewest rushing yards over the last 3 games. And now they go about against one of the best passing defenses in the league. So while the Jets haven't been, superstars defensively, like we thought they could be, Sauce Gardner has played a little bit worse, and DJ Reed has played a little bit worse. They're still one of the top units in the league. And the Chargers' passing success has been their main hallmark of winning games this season. They can't get anything going on the ground. Austin Eckler hasn't really rushed for anything since he came back from his injury. And Josh Kelly is just terrible. And I knew I had to bring that up again because I know how big a Josh Kelly fan you are.
That was just a fantasy little stretch where it was starting. But anyways, yeah. I hear you, though. This team does, struggle in spots where they tend to give games away, like you're saying, with Brandon Staley.
So I am not willing to give points with the Chargers at this point in the season. So the reason I'm on the Jets is because I do think that this is kind of like one of those make or break games, especially with the fact that they've really been pouring it on thick, saying Aaron Rodgers is going to be back this season. At some point, sooner or later, the Jets will have to show that they can win enough games to sneak into the postseason. And I think this is one of those games that they come away and win outright, especially if Breece Hall is able to come alive in this game, especially through the air like he was in last game. So I will take the Jets here. You're on the Chargers. And let's move on to the last betting board pick, which is Rachaad White over 27.5 receiving yards. So tell us why you like that one.
Yeah, so as I was updating my fantasy football rankings, which you can find at thegameday.com, I'm seeing these spots where damn, I got to take this prop too. And I just added all these plays into today's episode, and this was one of them. And it's really just the Texans against running backs. They're allowing 7 yards per target, which ranks 31st. We saw last week Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Blackshear combined for over 40 receiving yards against this Texans defense. And Rachaad White averages 33.3 receiving yards per game. So his average is already 6 yards clear of this prop. White is constantly getting checked down by Baker Mayfield. He's one of the most, the highest end, the most prolific receiving backs in the league right now. And despite his struggles on the ground. So, at 27.5, this seems totally attainable. And I'm going to ride with Rachaad White here.
Yeah, I definitely like this because while White's success, they're giving him a ton of volume. He hasn't done anything on the ground, but he continues to do things through the air. So 27.5 is a bit high for me, especially in this matchup where I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of offense, but I'm willing to ride along with it. All right. We had a ton of plays for the betting board, and most of it was to compensate for the fact that this is not the best Thursday night football matchup that we've had this season after, we've had a nice string of competitive games over the last 2 to 3 weeks. But we do have, for Thursday night football tonight, we have Will Levis going up against Kenny Pickett in what could be the most mids quarterback matchup of the season so far. It is the Titans versus Steelers for Thursday night football, but we're going to break it down for you right here. We have a few bets on both sides that we like, and then we have a little bit of a long shot Thursday night football parlay. So let's go ahead and start with the side, or actually the total that we liked for this game, and you went ahead and took the under. Tell us why.
Yeah, so I took the under 36.5 points. I know it's so low, but it's just the way these two teams play. The Titans, the under is 5-2 in their games. The Steelers, it's 6-1 in their games. Kenny Pickett has that ribs issue. Early in the week, we weren't sure if he was going to play. We thought it was Mitch Trubisky. It's a short week. Is he really at 100%? I don't know. The Steelers get Cameron Hayward back on defense, which could shore up their run defense. If you look at his PFF grades in run defense, it's really good, over 80. And he should help them, slow down Derrick Henry. And if the Titans are struggling to run the ball with a rookie quarterback like Will Levis, it could put them into, unfavorable situations and make it harder for Tennessee to move the ball. So despite it being such a low number at 36.5, I'm just going to roll with it and hope for, say, a 2014, 17-14 type of game.
Yeah, this is the thing with games like this. You have to hold your nose and take these unders, because while it doesn't seem like a good strategy, unders have been hitting at a crazy number, higher than they've been in years. This has been a really weird scoring season. It's one of the lowest scoring seasons that we've had in the last decade of football. So kind of have to hold your nose and go with it. I feel like this is a perfect script for this to be an under. In a contrarian world, I would be betting some overs, because this game is so bad that it almost has to be good in some way. Obviously, we saw Will Levis last week make a ton of deep throws, and a lot of people would be leaning towards the over in that case. But take a look at some of the underlying metrics of Levis's start. You'll see some things that you might be worried about. For one, his success rate, 33%. That's nearly 15% lower than the NFL weekly average for quarterbacks. That's not good. He had a lot of throws that were at the line of scrimmage or right ahead of it or right behind it. And then on 3 of his 4 touchdown passes, you either had a blown coverage by the defender or just some wacky misstep that led things to be a lot easier than have been. And we saw him miss some easy throws there. He's not a finished product by any means. You have to remember that the scouting reports on Levis were not good coming into the NFL draft, and that was a big reason why he was picked in the second round. Now, and again, this is the Titans and the Steelers. These are two teams that have been able to do nothing this season when it comes to offense. So I'm not really looking for a lot here. I do think that Levis is going to kind of take his medicine in this game. This is not the Falcons defense over again. The Falcons are barely able to generate any pressure at all whatsoever. I think we could see TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and some of the other D linemen on the Steelers really make Levis's night hell in this matchup. So I'm riding the under with you there. I like that a lot. And we're going to hop into my first prop, which is Derrick Henry over 11.5 receiving yards. And this is a play that I've loved to take over the last few years, because whenever Henry gets going, especially when he's able to catch passes in the backfield and then pick up a head of steam, he can really just rumble and just bowl over anyone in his path. He's just that big. So it's not as crazy a number as you think. Last game, in Will Levis's first game, he caught 4 targets and 4 receptions for 14 yards, and it was nothing truly special. But I do think that this is going to be a situation where Levis does see a lot of pressure, and that he's kind of forced out of the pocket, and dumping it off to Henry is the safer play here. And the reason I took this over Tyjae Spears is because we're starting to see Henry kind of pick up a little more of his normal snap count. I personally think this is going to be a game that the Titans had the lead for a decent amount of it, possibly due to one of those Levis bombs that goes down the field early, and the Steelers are forced to try and play catch up, and that'll lead to Henry playing, some more snaps than Tyjae Spears does there. So I do think Henry is going to be a good play here. He's hit this in 6 of 7 games this season, and honestly, the Steelers, they're not that good. They're good on the surface when it comes to defending running backs, but they allow the 3rd most yards per reception to running backs in the NFL this season. They're allowing nearly 10 yards per reception. So give me the Henry over here. If he sees 2 catches, he likely hits this.
Yeah, and plus if he struggles on the ground with Cam Hayward shoring up that run defense, like I was suggesting, you could see the Titans try to get the ball in Henry's hands through the air, and just to get him more involved. So I like that for sure.
You also took a running back prop though for this game. You took it on the Steelers side. So tell us about Najee Harris.
Yeah, I'm going Najee Harris under 45.5 rushing yards.
A play I love, by the way.
Yeah, he just
absolutely love.
We've seen the Titans under Mike Vrabel. They've had an elite run defense throughout his tenure. Najee Harris is one of the more inefficient starting running backs in the NFL. I believe he's averaging like 44 rushing yards per game. But this is the type of game where, the Titans D is a pass funnel defense where, since it's so hard to run on them and their pass defense isn't that great, you have teams airing it out a little more. And of course, Jaylen Warren is there as well. He gets a little bit of work he could take away from this production. Perhaps the Steelers get Harris some screens or some, dump offs out of the backfield to help him out against this tough front. And so he could still, what I'm saying there is Harris could still, get 60 yards of offense, but a chunk of it comes through the air. Like 45.5 for him feels like a bit too high given the Titans' run defense. I got to go with this here. He hasn't been explosive. It continues to be the case. We're taking Najee under.
Yeah, I like this because Najee just has not shown us really anything this season. So I'm willing to take the under here as well. It's probably not going to be something I explicitly play. I may buy it up a little bit and take 48 or 49. I don't see a scenario where the Steelers have enough of a lead to really lean on the run here. And I think we probably see Najee finish with somewhere in the 30, early 40 range, rather than get up into that mid to high 40s range. And like you said, Jaylen Warren continues to be a threat on a week-to-week basis here. So this is another really good look at this game. And you see, we're taking mostly unders in this game. The Henry play is more of a bailout play. We do have one pure over in this game, and it's really the only play that should be solidified in this game is to take this Deontay Johnson over, Frank. So why don't you tell us all about it?
Yeah, so I like Deontay Johnson over 57.5 receiving yards because in the 2 games since he's returned from injury, he's really dominated the target share for the Steelers. In those 2 games, I got the stats here. It's over 30% target share, over 12%, over 12 average depth of target, which means getting targeted a little more down the field. That's a bit higher than his career norms. And in a game where, it should be low scoring, you could see a lot of these Deontay Johnson catches over and in the intermediate passing game. He's soared past this number in each of his 2 games since coming back from injury at I believe it was 85 and 79 yards in those 2, which is well past this number. It's really, as much as George Pickens has looked good in Johnson's absence, since Deontay has been back, he's really reasserted himself as the top target in this passing game. And it's not really a high bar at 57.5 yards. Let's go with Johnson to clear this one.
Yeah, I really like this one because I dug into this a little bit earlier today. And what I found was that aside from the fact that the Titans are a true pass funnel in that they have the 3rd worst opposing ADOT, means they have some really kind of deep plays, more over the middle than anything. It really fits into the route tree that Deontay runs, which is those deep crossers and, kind of quick out routes. Those are the kind of routes that the Titans give up the most points to, and they fit right in Deontay's wheelhouse. They're a bottom 3 passing DVOA, and here's the real kicker. They are the worst defense in the league against wide receiver ones this season. And I know what people will say. Oh, Pickens has multiple games over 100 yards this season. He's the true wide receiver one. He's not. He's really just not. I mean, when Deontay plays in games this season, Pickens goes back to being a true kind of wind sprints guy. He runs a lot of routes, sure, but he doesn't see the targets on those, and it's not his fault. It's just the fact that Matt Canada is not a good offensive coordinator, and he's not getting the ball in more than one offensive player's hands, and he just feels safest getting the ball in Deontay Johnson's hands. And until Canada is removed, that's how this offense is going to go. It funnels to one guy. I'm not really sure that Pickett is completely capable of holding up more than one guy at this point in his career. So it's been Johnson. Every single time that he has the opportunity, he balls out. So I'm fully with Frank on this one. Deontay over 58.5 is one of my favorite plays as well. We do have a little bit of a Thursday night football parlay as well. It's a little bit of a long shot, but figure we would throw it in there. It is plus 1,000. That is 10-1 odds, and it is Chigo Okonkwo over 50.5 receiving yards and Deontay over 80.5 receiving yards. Now, we really don't have to go into this one too much, but Frank, why do you like Chigo Okonkwo in this matchup?
All right, so Chigo Okonkwo in his last 3 games has had a target share of at least 20%. So he's starting to get targeted a little more. But the main reason is that Minkah Fitzpatrick is out for the Steelers. He left in the first quarter last week against the Jaguars. And what happened? Evan Ingram caught 10 balls for 88 yards. So he had a big game. Now, is 50 yards a high number for Okonkwo? Yes, that's what makes this a long shot. But really, it's only 25 more yards than his listed prop, which is around 25.5. And Okonkwo is one of those rare downfield threats as a tight end. He even dropped a 30-yard catch last week, so his day could have been even bigger. I think he has a big game tonight for the Titans. I'm on his regular prop over 25.5 yards as well. And I think pairing him with Deontay Johnson works nicely in our long shot parlay for tonight's Thursday nighter.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Steelers run pretty heavy man coverage in this, and Chig has played pretty well versus man coverage. He's played better than he has versus zone. Chig is one of those tight ends that's going to function a lot more as a wide receiver, and tight ends who function more as wide receivers typically will play well. Especially if they can beat press coverage. Chig is one of those rare tight ends that's going to be able to beat press coverage, on the outside, or if he lines up in the slot. So give me Chigo Okonkwo here. I'm not too worried about the matchup at all. He might be able to get free for one downfield. We would probably see it early, if anything, and it gives me a little bit more hope that he has Will Levis throwing the ball to him. As like Frank said, he narrowly missed a 30+ yard catch last week, and he could have one again this week. So that's our long shot parlay. Definitely has a chance of hitting. I think that Deontay Johnson line definitely has a good shot as well. But that's going to be it for us on today's episode of Better Plays Ahead. Really looking forward to this week's slate. We have a bunch of really great games, besides the ones we broke down. The Eagles and Cowboys come up there as well. So bunch of great options. Make sure you guys head over to thegameday.com for all of your betting and fantasy needs. Frank and I have a bunch of stuff on there. We have a ton of other talented writers and content creators over there doing some great stuff. Go check out the Caps Off podcast. They'll be live on Sunday morning, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, then 1 o'clock into their watch along hour at 1 o'clock as well. But that is it for me and Frank on today's episode of Better Plays Ahead. And we will see you guys next week for week 10 best bets.